Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Chen and I'm a current senior in high school. Today I'd like to welcome you all to the very first episode of my podcast, The Anatomy of Education from a High Schooler's Perspective. And today I had the absolute pleasure to speak with Miss Julia Rubin, Crystal's Director of Teaching and Learning, who holds a master's in education from Stanford University and has spent years as an English, French, and creative writing teacher. As a Crystal alumni herself, she has come full circle from being a student to a teacher and now in a position of school leadership, where she now shapes our programs and classroom experience around transformative teaching, learning, and AI literacy. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Miss Rubin.
Okay.
Thanks again for coming on today. I appreciate your time. And I just wanted to ask you, like, can you share your path on like how you got into education as a whole and like what drew you into like teaching, learning, leadership?
Yeah. Well, I definitely say what drew me to education. There are a couple things I would say about that. One, I always loved school as a student. Even when school was hard, I just really loved being at school. I loved learning and I loved all of the elements of studying. And so I knew I had a passion for learning from when I was just a little child. And I even remember with my little brother, I would play like school with him and I would get his materials out and we would have a little class together. And, that being said, I never actually anticipated my career being in education. But now when I look back, I can see how that kind of unfolded. And honestly, I started teaching because I wanted to keep up my French. I had studied abroad as an undergraduate in Paris, and I had spent all this time investing in my learning French and wanting to stay connected to the culture. And I was also looking for a job when I graduated. And I called up Crystal and said, "Can I be on your substitute teaching list?" And then I got a call from them one day and said, "We have a long-term sub position in French and we think it's going to be like 3 weeks." And then 3 weeks turned into 3 months, and then 3 months turned into my first 3 years teaching at Crystal. And I taught English, I taught French of multiple levels in each department, and I also got to teach some creative writing. And by that time, I was like hooked. I was like, I'm a teacher. But I sort of stumbled into it, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's so cool. Yeah, so you were just like meant to be, like you knew.
I hope so. I hope so because I love it. But
Yeah.
some of it was spontaneous and some was a little more planned.
Yeah, because I remember, I think it was on a panel last year. You mentioned how you went into writing
Hmm.
English. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. My first graduate degree was actually in art school. I got an MFA in fiction writing. And I just wanted to write books and be a novelist, and I wanted that to be my career. And I realized like you can have more than one path. You can, like, I still write and I still have friends who are writers, and that fulfills me. And I also love teaching, and I get to do that also. And one day, hopefully, I'll get a book published.
Well, if you do, I will be the first to read it. And yeah, so thanks for sharing that. And I know before you came into the position as the director of teaching and learning, you did your grad school at Stanford.
Mhm.
I was just wondering, like, what are some things that you learned there, or just like during any point in your journey that kind of shapes your teaching philosophy and like how you approach education as a whole?
Absolutely. Yeah. So after I was in the classroom for about 9 years, I realized I really wanted to understand learning theory and I really wanted to understand the connection between theory and practice. And I wanted to bring more research findings from the world of education into schools. And so I got this sense that it was time. It was time to go back to school and get a master's of education. And I was fortunate enough to get a spot at Stanford's Learning Design and Technology Masters, which was really fun and so rewarding, especially coming in with teaching experience, because I kind of had a sense of how different strategies and solutions might play out in a real classroom in a real school. Um, and Stanford's Graduate School of Education has many different masters of ed. Some are more policy oriented, some like mine are more learning science oriented, and honestly, like sort of solution and tool building oriented. And some are more about equity and education. And so, learning design and technology, the theory that you learn is really about the learning sciences, the core mechanics of learning. Like, how does good feedback work? How does mentorship work? How can we create more inclusive and equitable learning environments? Like, what are the concrete things we can do to help our brains learn? And then the theory piece happens in the GSE, but then there's also a lot of course requirements in the D school. So you do a lot of design thinking, and a lot of like learning about rapid prototyping and iteration and like what's a proof of concept, how can you get users, how can you test? Like there's a little bit more of a product development side. And then if you choose, and I definitely chose this element of it, you can add on additional learning experiences that are in the business school. So if I took my whole sort of master's of ed, it was like a third in the graduate school of education, a third in the D school, and like a third in the business school. So by then I felt like I had a really cool look at how educational technologies are developed, how to maybe even build a business, but really it's about like finding solutions to learning problems and being able to share those solutions and hopefully have a positive impact. Um, and a lot of that filtered into my educational philosophy in the sense that now when I come to Crystal, I very much have like a design thinking approach when it comes to how I build solutions. I like to build first versions and iterate and refine and bring people along and build buy-in and try to get people to pilot solutions. And taking sort of a flexible, iterative approach to professional development has been really, really cool to see how that can work for early career teachers, mid-career, and even mentor teachers who still need those opportunities for growth. And so I definitely have pulled some of my learning into that story. But I will also say one of the things that I will always hold, and I think people don't necessarily know this about me, is that philosophically, I am a very progressive educator, which is funny to say at Crystal because, Crystal's not a particularly progressive educational institution. But when it comes to like, oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
What defines a progressive education? I
Yeah, so if you want to unpack like the most distilled version you can think of a definition for progressive education is student choice and student voice. So like bringing in choices in the classroom around students and their learning experiences and amplifying student voices to drive program is one of the core elements of progressive education. Then there are other elements to it that involve place-based learning and being outdoors, having opportunities for interest-driven learning. It's really about handing back, sorry, it's about handing back learning to students rather than traditional models that kind of assume that adults are meant to just take their wisdom and knowledge and deposit them into the minds of young people. Sorry. So I try to bring an element of that to Crystal as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super interesting. Like, I'm so
Oh,
glad
good.
with that.
I'm sorry, I'm coughing a little bit.
Help me take your time to drink water.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually, not that you asked this, but I actually think that's kind of how we AI proof the future
You just touched
is,
next
oh,
question.
oh, really?
Yeah,
What's the next question? Sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Just
Oh no, I just think the more we give students choice and voice in their learning, the more they'll know themselves and the more they'll be able to navigate the future.
Mhm. Yeah, Yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so thanks for sharing what progressive education was. Like I just learned something new and that's super.
Oh, nice.
And I
It-
definitely see that in the Crystal environment a lot, especially with like the course surveys. I know you've been like reiterating those and like I saw like the format changed and stuff like that. And I
oh,
think those are definitely very helpful to students and I'm very
oh,
grateful
good.
that's part of
Oh,
the system at Crystal. Yeah. And I mean, you kind of just touched on it already, but I was wondering, like, as a professional in education, how have you seen like the impact of technology and AI
mhm.
interfere with what you call or like defined as progressive learning or just like learning in general? And how has like the system of education like responded to these shifts?
Yeah. Well, I think about this a lot because AI has really not only has it impacted my work this year, but it's also sort of captured my imagination in all kinds of ways, in positive ways and not so positive ways in terms of what I feel the risks could be in education under the influence of AI, if you will. But I think that, first layer impact is that, and I would say this was a year or two ago, there was like a fever that everyone was cheating. It was like suddenly, input, output from an AI, you could just sort of get the answers and no one would be the wiser. And there were these cheating or these, AI detectors, but they didn't work so well. And ooh, it was just really a fever of being afraid of what could happen. And then the following year, there was a lot of like, we got to catch up. We're falling behind. AI is here. We have to prepare the kids. If we don't prepare the kids, they will never get jobs and we will not have served them. And that's like a teacher's worst nightmare. We didn't serve the children. We didn't set them up for success. And so that was a very also fear-driven response to these emerging technologies. And now what I am growing to understand is that while those things are true and we do need to do things like assess writing skills more in class than we did before and those kinds of pieces, I think we need to look much deeper at what happens when a learner is, as Ethan Mollick would say, engaging in sort of a co-intelligence with AI, and that interaction is impacting the way they see themselves and where their own authorship truly lies.
So like
Because when you're, yeah, yeah, so what were you going to say about that?
it's not only like knowing how to approach AI, but also how to like your self-awareness on your relationship. Is that what you're touching?
Exactly. Yeah, you said it better than I did. And I'm even noticing this in myself. Like, I can tell when I've had a really deep experience with an AI tool to help me manifest my vision, and that still feels like mine, and it still feels very authentic. And it's especially helpful when I need to do something very time intensive. Like I was trying to build a visual the other night of all of the schools in the Bay Area and beyond who have participated in our transformative teaching conference. And it was like 45 schools. And I really didn't have time to grab a image of a map and drop pens all over it 45 times. And so I'm like, yes, that was a good use of AI. Like it built me it wasn't exactly an accurate visual, but it wasn't terrible, and but having the visual actually augmented my impact of what I was trying to say about the way that we're growing our influence in teaching and learning beyond the walls of Crystal as Crystal. So that felt really good. But other times I've written pieces where I felt a little too rushed and I was like, these are my ideas, but I leaned a little heavily on the last paragraph, like, and then I start to feel a little wobbly in myself in terms of what it is I've actually created. And that feeling can be very slippery. And for me as an adult, that's one thing, but for kids to be trying to assess impact at that level feels like it could be really challenging.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely it's like one more question is like, is that assessment even there? Like
Hmm.
some people my age or younger, like I'm sure middle schoolers just aren't even aware of like the relationship with AI. It's like, oh, like do it the hard way or do it the easy way with AI. Like obviously choose the easy way. And like
Yeah.
thinking about that is kind of scary almost because it's just like the judgment isn't there. So
Yeah.
you're gonna approach such like a powerful tool. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and actually, there's a connection here between progressive educational philosophy and AI in the sense that a lot of the experiences designed for learners that are progressive in nature are meant to connect the learner with themselves, connect the learner with their passions, their motivations, essentially like what their soul and spirit desire to do with their lives. Like, and AI can it cuts both ways. AI can make that vision possible, but it can also obfuscate a learner from meeting their own self in that way too. And that's where like the real deeper work has to happen around literacy and awareness and discernment. And I think you're totally right that developmentally, if you're 11 years old or 12 years old, that's a very difficult type of awareness to be able to even explain.
for sure. Like AI could, or like as a high schooler, I could see how devastating AI could be for the kids in the long run. Like, sorry to go on a tangent, but like
No, 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 no.
in late elementary school, middle school, my parents signed me up for a program called Russian Math, which was just like a math tutoring thing where you take classes. And back then, AI didn't exist, obviously, and I hated Russian math. So then every single homework problem, I found a super useful website called Brainly, where like people would upload answers to the questions. So then I'd just like be using that to like do all my homework, and then I wouldn't understand any of the material I was learning. And
Yeah.
like that was honestly a difficult process because I often had difficulty finding the answers. But now with AI, it's like, bam, like kids can just find it and it's hard to enforce. So definitely it can
Yeah.
and kind of like touching on like both your points about like your experience in education along with AI. It's like I know you've been in the field of education for honestly probably like a really long time. I was wondering like in terms of mentorship, how do you, because I know you host the annual Transformative Teaching Conference at Crystal every,
Hmm.
and like, I'm sure there's educators from all sorts of different backgrounds there.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
in what ways do you mentor others or learn from others in those contexts? And like,
Hmm.
how does that
Hmm.
shape the way you approach education as a whole? Or like, does it even,
Hmm.
like, how much does it shape your
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the conference because I learned so much. And we do have representatives from so many different schools. Like this year we had about 25 schools come and it was similar the year before. And what you learn in those first of all, you get to network and meet people and just stay connected. You get to nerd out on the same things that you love and just like I've definitely made connections that I still keep and talk and folks I talk to as a result of that conference. And then in terms of mentorship, I think mentorship at the conference, many people who come to that conference, it might be the first time they've ever presented. And because it's mostly a teacher-powered conference, it's about teachers sharing practices. We like to give that space. We like to give that space for teachers to be honored and uplifted for their work in ways that maybe they haven't felt like they could before. Um, and we've had some early career teachers come to us and say how impactful it was for them to have a shot at presenting, and they never thought they could do it or they didn't see an opportunity, and that always feels really, really good. Just to hold space for them and to plug them into a network and to feel like we're giving something to the younger folks who are just kind of getting involved and maybe looking for a educational community.
Wow, that's so sweet. I'm like, that's so cool that you're able to do that. Like, honestly, I wish I could just like pop into that conference.
Yeah, you should come. Yeah. Maybe we should. I mean, I think it would be cool if we had students
Like,
even co-presenting with teachers. Yeah.
really. Yeah, because I don't know, I've been asked if I was married before, so
Oh,
maybe. But
You're
I
like, no.
think so long. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's interesting. Like, especially you said over 25
Mhm.
different schools. Like, because I think we've talked about this before outside of this, but like the many different, like, I guess communities or ways that like systems of educations are shaped. Like, you can go to Crystal and then you could go to like another school like 20 miles south in the Bay Area, and it's be
Yeah.
a completely different world there. So
Yes. Yeah.
it must be really powerful being able to hear
Yeah.
all sorts of different backgrounds. Like,
Yeah.
mhm.
Totally. And one thing we forget about our county, because we're here in San Mateo County, and San Mateo County runs all the way to the coast. It runs all the way to Pescadero.
Oh,
So
wow.
when you think about the representation of different types of schools and school environments in a very diverse county, it's much more vast than we realize.
I definitely
Um,
is too. Like, we live in like the area we live in, definitely.
yeah, and independent schools can be very siloed. And so we tend to be very buffered from the true limitations and challenges and constraints than a lot of other schools. It sets us up to be leaders and to be able to innovate and to be able to spend time being creative and strategic and pushing ourselves forward in these really, really rewarding and exciting ways. And I think we have a responsibility to pay that back to schools that just aren't in the position that highly resourced schools are, and share what we've learned, share expertise, and really build that community of practice across multiple types of schools, like public, private, charter. Um,
Bands,
it's
like,
part of being just a bigger community of practice.
for sure. And the Transformative Teaching Conference isn't just independent schools, it's like all sorts of different.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we really expanded it this year to include public and charter and religious schools. And there were schools from the East Coast, there were schools from Southern California, and then a lot of schools in the Bay Area. I think 35 of the total we have about 45 total represented schools over 2 years. But just this year there were 35. And it's like if you look at back to that, back to my making that map. If you look at the map, it's, the whole Bay Area is sort of like lit up with folks who have come to our conference, which gives us such a opportunity to truly be a community of teaching and learning, and also for Crystal to lead in that space.
mhm. I'd love to attend or just like pull up and
We
listen.
should co-present. That's
That's
what we should do
what
with for the Academic Student Council. I think that's what should be our goal for next year,
I
or
mean,
a
I'd
goal.
be super happy to present if
Yeah.
like if I could pass as a teacher and like
Oh, definitely. Because the teaching and learning that happens is just as much across peers, because you're having peer-to-peer powerful learning experiences, leadership and mentorship experiences. And so I think we don't need to think about teaching only occurring, among the adults. There's so much teaching and learning that happens among the students. And when I was a student at Crystal, my peers were one of my greatest teachers.
I definitely resonate a lot with that statement. Like, I learned so much from the people around me all the time. Like, they're definitely like, especially the community at Crystal, like, because I'd say, look, it's a very uncompetitive, like, people lift each other up rather than trying to tear each other down.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
education is kind of, or like, the core values of the community and education definitely really shape the way the system works.
Hmm.
Like, kind of touching on that, like, how do you like balance the, because a lot of like pressure or like competitiveness also often stems from like academic pressure. So like as the director of teaching and learning, how do you balance like both academic pressure and academic rigor and student well-being, like
Mm.
have a good balance of the two with.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I think it's all about how we focus our energy because I think we can do rigorous learning that is replenishing and rejuvenating, and that's actually good for our emotional health. And then we can also lose and expend a lot of energy on tasks and experiences that are more depleting. This gets back to sort of individual discernment and awareness. Like if we give kids an opportunity to understand what it is re-energizes them, then that rigor can feel just so energizing and so inspiring. But on the flip side, if we are engaged in the type of schedule, I actually, this is sort of a sidebar, but I actually think the way our, not just us, but high school schedules are designed is kind of difficult to that's a difficult thing to balance, the rigor and sort of like maintaining achievement in a system like ours, because we lose a lot of energy just switching between things and classes all day long. And that context switching is very energy intensive. So there's like the energy output that happens in the classroom, but then there's also just the energy output of being in the system. And what I would love to see is for schooling to take on a shape and form where we're spending more of our time on the kind of rigorous activities that are energizing and maybe disruptive to systems and schedules, but allow us to learn and grow in a way that feels really healthy and rigorous and not sort of rigorous but exhausting, which is a little bit where I think schools are right now.
Definitely with like college applications being so much more competitive like every single year and like the pressure to succeed even especially in like such a rigorous community like Crystal like
Yes.
be like super important to like not only just the education that we receive as students as but like to our well-being and like
Hmm.
mental health as a whole like
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I don't know like within all your experience, like have you seen any specific teaching practices both at Crystal and outside of Crystal that have helped both strike this balance?
Hmm.
So like give students the passion that you said that like academic rigor help.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I honestly think that our senior projects are a good model for what deep, rigorous learning could be. That time frame for the seniors is so minimal, but you can imagine if we were doing deep, rigorous projects around topics that students were truly passionate about, and they were structured with research and mentorship and design elements, it could be incredibly rewarding and rigorous, and allow students to get in contact with what motivates them intrinsically, which is always what we want. We want students to feel and experience more agency, which is like one of the number one things, also back to AI, that educators are naming as critical right now. Having students have experiences where they can take action on a vision that they hold, something they want to make, they want to build. This is such a critical element right now. And so, on a certain scale, I see it at Crystal and things like senior projects or some of our hands-on learning classes like PET and AET PET. And I'd love to see more of that kind of grow over time.
And definitely like back to the academic pressure standpoint, like
Hmm.
personal experience that like really resonated with what you just said. Like
Mm.
obviously I know like English at Crystal is known to be super rigorous, challenging, and like pushes us to like be better in our work. And like the process of like writing passage analyses or like essays has always been like both like really it taught me a lot, but it was also like a very stressful process. But
Hmm. Hmm.
one thing I've never really experienced, where like I experienced like genuinely for the first time this year was for my final in-class essay in junior year English. Like my I was at a point in my grade that I was pretty comfortable. And like the very first time, it was the very first time that I was able to just like write without the pressure of like
Mhm.
about what grade I was going.
Mhm.
And then I just really found myself like enjoying the process and just like really
Mhm.
pushing myself to think like go more deeply into like what is the author trying to say in the text
Mhm.
rather than just like thinking, oh, like how am I going to be thorough? And I think
Mhm.
entire process like akin to senior projects, just like what can bring out like the passion for something and like not have it be erased by academic pressure and the pressure to achieve like stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like it really just resonated with my experience as.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to end on one final question.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I really enjoyed this conversation. Like I'm so
Yes, me too.
time. But my final question is like what excites you most about the future of education,
Mhm.
AI and technology and all these massive shifts that have been happening? And also what concerns you the most about the future?
Yes, totally, totally. Before I get into that, I just want to say I love that you brought up a writing example as something that you felt was, you had a moment of transformation where you kind of could shift out of being concerned over, you had achieved a certain level of mastery to feel like you could really take flight in that. And I want to highlight that because any kind of learning experience can be that experience for someone. Like for you, you're like, it was writing. So we don't have to take down like we don't have to be like I mean, say what you will about the 5 paragraph essay, but anything can be a vehicle for transformation, you know, even traditional forms. It doesn't mean I've been talking a lot about sort of design and prototype, but you don't have to like make a prototype and try to sell it and call that transformation. Like transformation can be you and a poem, can be you and like a piece of clay. It could be you on a walk. Like it can be anything at all that taps into that deeper self. And I think that's helpful to remember also because transitioning into talking about AI, the vision that folks hold for the way AI can empower young people often does lean into product development, product design, building solutions, scaling them up, making money from them. There's a real like entrepreneurial pressure that I don't think that is exciting and exhilarating and wonderful. And here we are in the Bay Area. But it's not the only way to experience creativity. Creativity can happen in all kinds of different ways and in traditional settings and in progressive settings and everywhere in between. And so I love that you use that example and I want to hold like a big open frame for what transformation can actually be. It's not just one way, it's not just one type of assignment. Um, I think the opportunity, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Anything as small as that or anything like as big as like a system, like it can really be anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, no, no, no. I'm so glad this came up because it's so important to hold that.
Mhm.
Um, AI opportunities, I think at its best, AI can be a very meaningful support for supporting learners in making up gains in learning that the traditional classroom is not allowing them to. So you might have heard of um, this term ITS or intelligent tutoring systems. I think if we invest in that, they could be very powerful in meaningful ways.
Sorry, before you keep going, could you
Yeah.
define I I intelligent learning systems is
Intelligent, yeah, and so intelligent tutoring systems is like there are different examples of this, but essentially an AI powered technology that is like your personal tutor that is able to track and adapt to every keystroke, every response, every correct, incorrect answer. And we suddenly have the power to create these like highly personalized tutors in whatever subject. And this will continue to improve. And so there's a lot of opportunity there, especially for kids who are struggling in reading, struggling in early literacy and early math. Like that has a lot of potential. And I also think there's a lot of potential to build things. So this whole transition around using natural language to code and build things in the digital space is crazy, huge, amazing, so much possibility. And I think letting students have the opportunity to build things that they're passionate about is essential. Also, a really wonderful possibility. On the risk side, I would say the risk that keeps me up at night about AI is that it will contribute to an already growing and massive economic disparity among groups of students. Um, I think it's already happening, and I think it will continue to happen, even just in who's literate in using AI tools. There's this newer term people are using called cognitive stunting. You've probably heard of cognitive offloading, but it's now gotten sort of extended into this idea that we could essentially like hinder our own cognitive development by over-reliance on AI tools. Everything's happening so fast that it's hard to know how this will all evolve. Um, but I do think, kind of circling back to something we talked about earlier, that level of discernment to know where my intelligence ends and the AI begins, where am I creating like fruitful co-intelligence experiences that are actually augmenting my learning versus actually just outsourcing is the critical element of protecting ourselves against what could be those developmental risks.
Yeah, for sure. But with these risks, AI, like you just mentioned, can have like many potential harm.
Yeah, so many of these things just cut both ways. It's like that's part of what's hard to hold in the mind is like that there are these like paradoxical forces at play. And
Like
yeah,
God, it's like
sorry.
devil's bargain. Like with all the good things comes bad. But
Yeah.
that's too pessimistic. Like,
Yeah, no, I think it's true. I think we're going to be navigating both elements, both sides.
okay, so thank you all so much for listening to the very first episode of the podcast, The Anatomy of Education. I hope you all enjoyed the insightful conversation I was able to have with Miss Julia Rubin, and I will see you all next time.